this deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at this blog post by Dorian Scott Cole
Okay.
called Finding Your True North, Navigating External Expectations.
Right.
It's all about self-worth, societal and religious pressures, and finding out what really makes a fulfilling life.
And how to actually get there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the post kicks off with this line that really grabs your attention. If you aren't true to yourself, you're losing your soul.
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful statement for sure.
It is.
It makes you want to think.
It really makes you want to keep reading. The post seems especially concerned about the pressure on younger generations to conform to external expectations. I'm wondering if this resonates with you at all and what your thoughts are on how that impacts our sense of self-worth.
Well, I think it's a struggle a lot of us face, regardless of age. The blog highlights how social media constantly bombards us with these idealized images and narratives.
Yeah.
It makes it really easy to fall into that comparison trap. Yep. And then there's the pressure within some religious communities to conform to specific roles or duties, even if they conflict with their personal values.
Yeah.
So it's like...
It's like we're being pulled in so many directions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the blog brings up the Bible verse Matthew 16:26, where Jesus talks about denying oneself and taking up one's cross to follow him.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear how the blog connects this to the idea of losing your soul in today's world.
Well, the blog uses this verse to start a conversation about, the different expressions of Christian discipleship.
Okay.
It points out that some are called to be missionaries and dedicate their lives to spreading the gospel, and often involving significant sacrifice. Others live out their faith through everyday actions and contributions within their communities.
Yeah.
So do you think the author is trying to say that one path is inherently more valuable than the other?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
The blog seems to emphasize that both paths are valid and valuable. I wonder if the author is kind of pushing back against a certain type of judgment within religious communities where grand gestures of sacrifice are sometimes seen as the only true measure of faith.
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful point. It's challenging this notion that we have to constantly make huge sacrifices to be considered good Christians.
Right.
Maybe it's more about aligning our actions with our values, regardless of the scale.
That makes me think about the blog's distinction between an internal and external locus of identity. Could you explain that a bit more for our listeners?
No, an internal locus of identity basically means you derive your sense of worth from your own values and self-acceptance, rather than relying on external validation. So, for example, do you feel good about yourself because you got a promotion at work, which is external validation?
Right.
Or is it because you acted with integrity in a tough situation, which reflects your internal value?
That's a really helpful way to frame it. It reminds me of the blog's argument that Jesus ended the Old Testament system of penal substitution, which, for those unfamiliar with the term, refers to the idea that Jesus' death atoned for the sins of humanity. The blog argues that instead forgiveness is freely available through direct repentance to God.
It's interesting how it kind of shifts the focus from these external rituals to an internal transformation.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how this connects to the idea of finding true fulfillment?
Yeah, it seems like the blog is pointing towards this deeper kind of freedom, not just from external rules and expectations, but from this constant striving for external validation. I'm sensing a shift from focusing on what we should do to really exploring who we are, what brings us genuine joy.
Exactly. The blog encourages introspection, looking inward, but it also cautions against being too harsh in judging ourselves. It emphasizes that dwelling on guilt and condemnation isn't really helpful. Whereas embracing forgiveness and focusing on love can be really transformative.
So instead of constantly seeking approval from outside sources, maybe the key is to cultivate that inner peace and self-acceptance. But how does that translate into practical advice for navigating the external pressures we face daily?
Well, the blog might not lay out a step-by-step guide, but it offers some valuable principles, I think. Self-awareness is really crucial, like understanding our own values and motivations and what truly fulfills us. And it takes courage to challenge societal norms and expectations, to create space for our own unique path, even if it means going against the grain.
I wonder if that's where the author's guitar analogy comes in.
Oh, yeah.
It's used as a metaphor for how we often sacrifice personal passions to meet those external expectations. It feels like a reminder that those neglected talents and dreams are still a part of us, even if they've been pushed aside.
Yeah, the guitar analogy is powerful. It resonates with a lot of people who feel pressured to prioritize work or family obligations or societal expectations above their own passions.
Yeah. Do you think there's a way to find a balance, or is it always an either-or situation?
That's a great question. One that I'm sure a lot of us grapple with. I don't think the blog offers any easy answers, but it does encourage us to examine our priorities and to consider what might need to shift, to create more space for the things that light us up. It's not about neglecting our responsibilities, but finding a rhythm that honors both our inner needs and our outer commitments.
It reminds us that neglecting our passions can lead to this kind of emptiness and unfulfillment.
Yeah.
It's a call to rediscover those things that bring us joy, to rekindle that spark
It
within.
makes you think about the difference between living a life driven by shoulds, versus one that's guided by a deeper sense of purpose.
It's about reclaiming our narrative, moving away from external validation and towards a more authentic way of being. Yeah, it's fascinating how this shift in perspective not only impacts our personal lives, but also our relationships with others.
Absolutely. When we are secure in our own identity, we can connect with others from a place of authenticity and empathy. Instead of judging or comparing, we can celebrate each other's unique gifts and perspectives.
Yeah. Do you think this idea of embracing our authentic selves makes us more self-centered? Or does it actually free us to be more present and giving in our relationships?
That's a thought-provoking question. I think the blog would argue that it's the latter. When we're constantly trying to fit ourselves into molds created by these external expectations, we're not really truly present. We're too busy performing to meet those standards. But when we embrace our true selves, flaws and all, we can offer genuine connection and support to others.
Like we're finally able to show up fully without the masks and pretenses. It's about recognizing that true fulfillment often comes from a balance between nurturing our own well-being and contributing to something larger than ourselves. When we're aligned with our values and passions, it naturally radiates outward, positively impacts our relationships and our work. It's not about becoming self-absorbed, but about recognizing that you can't pour from an empty cup.
It seems like this message has resonated throughout history. Philosophers like Socrates emphasized self-knowledge. And spiritual leaders have advocated for inner peace and detachment from worldly desires. This quest for authenticity and inner fulfillment seems to be a universal human longing.
It's a reminder that we're not alone in this. Countless others have navigated these challenges and found ways to live intentionally and create lives filled with purpose and joy. What does this all mean for our listener who's been on this deep dive with us today?
Perhaps it's an invitation to pause and reflect on their own lives. And the expectations they carry. What are the sources of those expectations? Are they truly aligned with their values? It's about asking, where do I derive my sense of worth? Am I living in alignment with my true values and passions? And if not, what small steps can I take to move in that direction?
And it's not about making these drastic changes overnight, but about taking small, consistent steps that lead to lasting transformation.
I agree.
I remember the blog ends with this really powerful question. It asks what talents or passions we might be neglecting. And how embracing them, even in small ways, could lead to a more fulfilling and authentic life. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a call to action, It's like, it's urging us to stop just thinking about these ideas and start actually putting them into practice. True fulfillment isn't something we find somewhere out there, it's cultivated from within. By making conscious choices and really prioritizing the things that make us feel alive.
Sometimes those choices might mean letting go of things that no longer serve us. Even if society tells us they're important.
Absolutely. It's about defining success on our own terms and creating a life that feels authentic and meaningful to us. Even if it looks different from what other people expect.
What stands out to you from this deep dive?
I feel like we've uncovered this new perspective on what it means to live a fulfilling life. It's inspiring to think that we have the power to shape our own lives, choose joy and authenticity, create a world that aligns with our values and our vision for the future.
This blog post really encourages us to embrace those passions that we've maybe been neglecting, cultivate our talents, and live authentically.
It's been a thought-provoking deep dive.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration that was tailored just for you. I hope it sparks further reflection and inspires you to embrace your true north.